All right, so I will call to order the meeting of the Airport Commission at 4 p.m. on May 3rd. Commissioners attending remotely, if you can please unmute and acknowledge yourselves for a moment.
Hello, afternoon.
Hello, Brian, great to see you. Welcome to the Airport Commission.
Thank you.
Jeff, good to see you as always. All right, so the first item that we have is the agenda itself. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
That's moved by Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Stephen. Any comments or proposed changes to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 3 is public forum. Hello, folks.
Howdy, Tim
Anything-
Shea from Heritage Aviation.
Mike Sanchez also heard at the big high school return.
Yeah, so let me introduce Ben real quick. So Ben, I think you said this is your third day or third time here,
Yeah.
fourth time now. So he's interning with Dave's department in the operations with us for a couple of months or a month. He wants to be an air traffic controller, but Dave is saying he needs to be an airport operations.
Don't crush his dream, man. Right, anything you guys want to say in public forum today, or are you just here to observe?
Just here to observe.
Yeah, here, bring some awareness out of people.
Great, thank you for coming today. And I don't see anyone from the public.
Nope.
In that list. So we will close down public forum, move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the contents of the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Stevens. It was seconded by Stephen. Nick, anything you want to mention on the consent agenda regarding appointments?
What I typically mention, which is we're almost there. We're almost there. The first, so this is January, February, March numbers. When you look at the 3 total, we're still 4-ish%, 5% away from our 2019 numbers, not including the 2020, even though that's when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, and especially the 26,000 month of March in 2020 versus a normal 52,000, which is what we typically see in the month of March. Still not quite there yet. We are there, and you'll hear that both in Marie's report and my report later on. Certainly there in our parking capacity and our parking garage, and definitely during the times of holiday and school breaks. And the like. So projections moving forward, we have a very strong airline forecast coming our way for the months, for really the summer months. So we're looking forward to a busy summer and hopefully getting back up to that 100% mark, if not beyond 2000, definitely 2020, but 2019 calendar years.
Commissioners, any other? Oh, did you have something?
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I was also going to mention our landed weight capacity is up as well. Just as a quick reminder, we track that because we bill based off of the gross maximum landed weight on our runway. You can see the month of March had a $67+ million total land. Excuse me, that would be great. $67 million, 67 million pounds of landed weight in the month of March 2023. When you cruise through the last 10 or so years, that's right up there with some of our peak months, and that's a really great sign. You're going to see that in the numbers for April. You're definitely going to see that in the month of May, which we just started. For example, United Airlines is now operating 3 mainline every single month, starting this Friday and going for the rest of the month, as well as our June numbers coming back online with additional routes coming on. Minneapolis, St. Paul start in the month of June. So again, it just goes back to that statement of we're gonna have a very busy summer with passenger and operations as usual.
Is this the time to ask,
Yes, any of the contents of
is the airport ready?
We're ready. We have, there's a couple of things that always adds the challenge of peak number of passengers, peak number of operations, both on airfield, terminal, parking, etc. And that's construction. That always adds a little bit of a strategic challenge that we have to overcome. We have some major projects happening at the airfield. And we have some peak hours that we're working with both TSA. The good news is we've finished most of the construction in the terminal. So we're open on the new north end on the renovations that we have up there, which is going to really add to the experience of our customers. And we're working on new projects for parking garage and other opportunities for parking. So that we don't hit some of those peak hours. We're not the only one though for parking challenges in the airport industry. All of our partners in New England and I'm sure actually beyond, I know Philly is very similar. Where the clientele of the passenger is a little bit different. The stay in the parking garage is a little bit longer, and the overlap, especially like I said during holiday time periods, is definitely longer. We need to really analyze this before we can make some recommendations for changes specific to the garage. But overall, airfield, terminal, parking, and beyond operations, engineering, planning for next year's project, we're
Staffing.
we're getting there, and I'll go through the reorg updates a little bit later. We're getting there. We're fully staffed in the operations department. In fact, Dave is going to sign off the newest person, I think Monday.
Yeah,
This week. So we're fully staffed in our operations department. Our ambassador team is not yet staffed, but Marie's been doing an exceptional job growing that team. I think you hired 2 new people this week over the last 2 weeks.
One this last week, but we've been hiring.
We've been hiring. We're also seeing shifts. We're seeing some folks leaving, one in particular going to TSA and moving around. And we're also working with our partners too, because we're in a good position. The city, the airport team is. We're staffed in maintenance, operations, almost staffed in ambassador. That's always going to be a fluctuation. We're in a really good position. It's our partners that need the help. It's the airline partners, or more specifically, the ground handlers. It's our concessionaires, Hudson News, Skinny Pancake. I don't want to speak for Heritage, but those are the folks that really are looking for new hires to really accommodate some.
Have you heard anything from the FAA about
Cutbacks?
their staffing levels? Because I heard up and down the East Coast, there's going to be cutbacks because of FAA limitations this summer.
You're talking air traffic control?
Yeah.
I have not heard that. We meet with FAA tower manager every week. She has not advised that there's any cutbacks here. In fact, they just got an increase here at this
I
facility.
would think it's at the the regional airports. I would think it's mostly except the main air traffic control centers.
Yeah.
But
Right, especially to the limitations of going into those major metro areas. We haven't directly seen a result of that going into the New York area, specifically in DC area, Philly. But we might see that this summer with some of those cutbacks. The good part is a lot of these airlines are operating mainline aircraft. So it's going to give us a slight advantage over keeping a slot or however those airlines are working their networks out versus regional jets, which could be a little bit easier of a cut that would happen. So we're American, United, Delta are all operating the main lines. Not all of the routes, but many of them.
bring it on.
Bring it on.
Nick, I like the new commercials I've been seeing on TV and social media and such. So congratulations to whoever is responsible for that. Hannah, okay, thank you. And I know that Hannah in the past has been responsible for identifying the number of openings that exist in a parking lot on the website and such. Is that somewhat right? I'm wondering if those two can communicate with each other, because I'm thinking that if we are going to have a larger number of people this summer, a lot of those people may not have been flying for a couple of years. They're hustling to get to the airport, and then all of a sudden they're freaked out because they can't. They're on the third floor, and they're wondering if there's going to be available spots, and there always is, but it's just that sort of moment of uncertainty that create some concern amongst people. So just wondering if there's some way. I know that some of those commercials and ads don't have any spoken words, but I'm just wondering if there's some sort of way that we could remind people that there's valuable information on the website, including the information on the available parking spots.
And I think Hannah's done a really good job with mostly social media campaigns. For example, as soon as Marie advised the team and we were able to we knew the projections were coming in very peak demand over that school vacation period. So what Hannah was able to do was post every single day, point to the website, point to alternate locations. We're not yet advertising. We still want to advertise to come to the airport, park at the airport, and then Marie's team, the ambassador team, the maintenance team, the operations team, we're all really integral in finding additional parking within our parking garage, even though there wasn't a line stripe necessarily there. And that required a lot of manual labor, a lot of pinpointing and communication to make that happen. But on the social side and the preemptive side of prior to coming to the airport, really challenging to change those commercials because there's that and time slots are that. But social campaigns and we do have 20,000 plus followers. Hopefully those are all the people in town, right? But we too try to capture that as live as we possibly can, whether social, radio, or other means, and to the website.
Yeah, and I think we have a couple of radio spots coming up over the summer that give a shout out to our website. A little bit more information about flights, but yeah, on the fly things, it's definitely, I think, best that we try to communicate through socials.
In that social posting that you were doing, we were very close to hitting capacity. We actually did hit capacity, but we were creating spots. We didn't let anybody show up at the airport and not be able to park. And so that was, I have to give a really big shout out, especially to those ambassador teams that were hustling. And we got extra support from other teams here at the airport. But in those daily postings, it was saying just, we have parking up on the 4th and 5th floor. So letting people know, messaging that the garage is more than 1 floor or 2 floors, right? So if somebody thinks they're going to just we can go up. And we had ambassadors when we were super busy. We actually had ambassadors that were stationed, like if you were coming up and going to go in the garage, that were stationed there. And they were telling customers, we had actually some ambassadors in the garage as well, who were helping to direct traffic and helping so that people didn't spend an amount of time looking for parking spots. So little time consuming, but we were trying to get that message out there. Yeah.
And I want to be really careful too that this isn't all the time.
Mm-hmm.
These are in very
unusual,
specific,
unprecedented. That it was unprecedented for the amount of how quickly we went up to capacity, because this is a new phenomenon here, but we are planning that it will happen again. It doesn't typically. The summer tends to be a lower capacity for the airport. We have a lot of vacation travelers. We have a lot of people coming to the area and renting cars and things like that. So our peak is March and April are the biggest months for our parking garage revenues, and the biggest for the capacity. So just sort of an interesting phenomenon that when we see that, we try to assist the customers and they can have a good experience from the get-go.
Well, they can always use the airport commissioners.
Well, we did. You know, as I mentioned, every event of us. And we're contemplating charging you to this meeting. And there's great improvements happening too, we're looking at it on a short-term and a long-term strategy, right? Yes, we reacted to some of this holiday break, reacted really well to it because we saw it back in February during that break as well. But long-term planning, hotel is going to be a major addition to that, so we have the data ahead of time. Who's parking, not the full garage, but a portion of it. We have better lighting in the garage. We're gonna have a new signage program going into, to Marie's point, to direct people going up. So it's essentially one-way access points throughout the garage. So it should have that better experience for the passenger to get to the first available spot rather than searching.
All right, commissioners, we're technically on the consent agenda still, but are there any other comments or questions on the content of the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the contents as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been approved. We move on
I
to,
abstain.
oh, yes, sorry, Lynn.
I was not here, so I'll abstain.
Okay, fair enough. Item 5 are action items. So the first item up for business is 501, Director of Aviation Reappointment Letter. Oh, this one has my name on it, so I guess I can do this one. So I will make a motion. I would entertain a motion that we convey the content of the current version of the reappointment letter to the mayor, endorsing our position of Nick being reappointed for another year as airport director. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Greg. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Stephen. So for those of you, Jeff would know this, most of you other commissioners are relatively new, but we tried something a little different this year. Historically, the drafting of this letter came from one source, and we decided to open that up for multiple sources of input this year. So thank you for all the commissioners who weighed in at the multiple stages for this. I guess I would just start with, are there any, now that you've all seen 2 or 3 drafts to the commissioners, do you have any proposed changes that you would like to make to the letter? Any amendments, any tweaks, anything like that? Okay. So thank you for that. And then commissioners, any comments on the process, any comments on Nick's performance that you want to call out at this particular time before we take a motion on the vote itself? Take a motion to vote on the letter itself.
I think the letter speaks for itself, so I won't overstate the obvious, but I just want to say it's been a real pleasure working with you, Nick. I've only been here for a short period of time, but what I've seen in terms of your interaction with staff, what I've seen in terms of your display and how you handle yourself in terms of news interviews, I just think we're lucky to have someone.
Thank you.
Sure.
I love this job, so thank you.
Right, anything else, commissioners? All right, and I too will echo that. Thank you, Nick, for your work. You've taken the airport a long way. It's the summer of 21 essentially. So yeah, done great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll call the question. Commissioners, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick. We move on to item 5.02, which is a contract for airfield marking. So I'm going to entertain a motion that the Board of Finance and City Council approve entering into a contract with Highlight Airfield Services for runway and taxi markings. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Greg. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Stephen. And Dave, you're up.
Sure, I can explain that a little bit. So this is, every year we have to redo majority of the markings for the airfield, taxiways and runways. And especially for our inspection that we have coming up on July 18th, 19th, 20th. we have to be prepared for that. So we do some of the markings in-house. A lot of it is done via contract. So that's why we have to go out to bid for this. So this is to remove the existing paint to about 60 to 80% of removal, eradication of that existing paint. So it actually gives a more of a clean surface for the paint to adhere. So they eradicate it and they put stuff down. Jordan tax away more of the intricate stuff that the in-house staff does not do. So.
Right, Commissioners, any for,
That's not something you have to do every year.
Yep.
No, I mean, the painting inspection you get every year, but taking the old paint off is done every year.
Yeah, it all depends also on how many years what we'll do is wait a couple years, wait for it to build up a little bit. But you don't want a significant amount of buildup. You start getting 4, 5, 6 layers of paint, and it doesn't adhere properly to the surface. So usually wait about eradicate every couple of years, and then we take it off and put it back down.
And it is a little bit more complex than just the paint, like street paint. Most of the paint also requires glass beads inside of it for reflectivity. So that builds on to what Dave was talking about with those layers, that crisp layer there.
And the reason why we put it out a bit also is because the eradication, they actually use a water blaster that uses about 10,000 PSI to eliminate actually takes up the existing markings before putting the new markings down. So it's quite a process, and we don't have the equipment to do that eradication. That's why the company comes in. So, and actually the beads, they kind of good point about the beads. We actually use what's called a virgin bead, which is a certain type of bead that increases the amount of reflectivity. So you can lose a certain amount of beads and it still maintains that reflectivity. So it should maintain for the year. And that's why the beads, with sweepers and the plows and stuff, it really takes a toll on this market. So that's why we have to do them here.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead, Greg.
Dave, it looks based on this document that you received 2 proposals. Are you going to have 2 different contractors working on this, or is just one going to do all the sort of contracted work?
Well, we have 2 things. We have both the markings as well as the rubber removal, and the same contractor came in lower for both of them. So we'll have the same contractor do both work efforts.
And just out of curiosity, is this a contractor that has a good reputation in the business, or is this sort of a new person? Or
no, they were here last year too, so it's good to have them back here. Do great, excellent job.
Okay.
A lot of times the airlines will hire the same group. These are pretty well known, especially in the region, well known quality. And Dave and I had a lot of conversations too with the quality, making sure that it fit in line with what we were expecting. The airlines are actually going to be hiring Highlight as well to do their markings. They are responsible for their markings at their gate positions. And they're very comfortable with these, not just at our airport, but others.
All right, Commissioners, any other comment?
just one other one out of curiosity, because I actually years ago did some of this work, but it was on a hand machine. And
It's been a bit.
I would never do it again. I tell you, it was just a mess. You had to get out there with razor blades to clear out the paint, where the paint came out, and it was just a mess. And I know that we had to stay in communication with the tower all the time, and I imagine that it's tricky work. The machinery obviously is much better. Is some of it, just out of curiosity, is some of it done at night?
Yep.
Okay.
So we just open at night. Yeah.
It's a fascinating process to watch. So I don't know if it's highlight, but some of them use robots to actually mark out the plans based on the engineering designs and all of that good stuff. These folks, this is what they do. This is a lot of times, this is the paint crew that goes from place to place to place to place. So it's incredibly efficient. Our crew is really, really fantastic. We do have those standby machines. We just purchased 2 years ago, I believe, our new truck, which you have a driver and you have somebody sitting in the back of the bed of the truck, very precisely aligning with lasers and things like that. And the work that we do, or sometimes I think we're doing all the runway work this year.
Yeah, more of the runs, continuous runs, the easier
Big
stuff.
stuff.
And we have contractors who do this more tedious stuff where they're more, I think, more expertise in. So,
You can actually see on the map, some of the big white markings are just these massive areas that our crew can get in there to do what they have to do. Really precisely, mostly on the runway, and then everything else is essentially this contracted work, like Dave was saying.
the yellow.
And every marking in every location means a very specific thing, so it's gotta be incredibly precise and accurate, up to quality standards.
All right, Christian, is that? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to item 5.03, which is the airfield rubber removal. We already started to talk a little bit, so, but before we go there, I have to entertain the motion first to recommend to the Board of Finance and City Council that they approve the entering into a contract with Highlight Airfield Services for residual rubber removal. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Greg. Do we hear a second? Thank you, Stephen. This is good two-man show. Okay,
Great. So if you take a look at the picture up there, you'll see the big blocks, I'd say about a fifth down each end of the runway. That can show it to you here. But basically, this section in here, from here to back here, you see a black patch. What that is the rubber buildup that happens. We have so many touch and goes, we have so many large aircraft, airline aircraft, F-35s, that they usually touch down about 1,000 feet down the runway. And that's where that buildup starts to become a problem, because it actually decreases the amount of braking action of the aircraft. And so what we have to do is we have to go in and remove that rubber. And not only that, it also obscures the markings out there too. So the center line of the runway is obscured. So occasionally we have to put a note out, which is notification to the pilot saying that runway markings are obscured. So because of that, we have to have a contractor come in to eradicate remove the rubber. So we do have, it's a 2-year contract, and it's for 4 applications, twice per year.
Commissioner, any questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the last action item, 5.04, is an airport budget amendment. I'd entertain a motion to recommend approval of the proposed budget amendment by the Board of Finance and City Council.
So moved.
Second? Yeah. All right, Marie, what do you have for us?
Well, a couple times a year, especially as we get later in the year, I will bring forth a budget amendment. And we have quite a few cost centers, and we have each line the city requires us, even though we are well within our budget overall, they require us to have an approved budget for each expense line item within each cost center. So as you can imagine, as the year goes on, I end up with some line items, some are very small and some are a lot larger, where I need a little bit more money in order to comply with the city procurement policies and budget policies. And so this budget amendment is bringing forth and is looking to, we'll say, correct and better estimate the actual spending pattern that we have this year for our fiscal year 2023 budget. So I'm bringing those forward and trying to describe in groups, sort of to give a better understanding of which areas why we're adjusting it, and maybe some of the specifics that we had. So some areas we had, maybe some are just adjustments, corrections, and then just some are a little bit more where, especially like in some of our professional contracting services, electrical supplies that we have on the runway. We've been replacing a lot of lights and other such things that come out of that category of the runway. We have a very large runway, so it's easy if we start replacing more things to have that be higher than we maybe thought or historically have seen each year. So this is just an adjustment to bring that forth. And I take this information and I use it as we're projecting and building our new budget. Do we have any specific questions on any of the line items that I have? Or just in general, the process of what I'm doing? Yes.
Marie, under rentals equipment,
Yes.
it talks about the front end loader and that renting was needed, and the last sentence says we intend to seek a permanent solution in time for next winter, and the increase request is 50,000. Is the 50,000 just for the rental, or is some of that earmarked for purchase perhaps of a?
That is just for the rental. So the rental was about $45,000 for the rental for 3 months. This is a ginormous bucket loader. I mean, it's you have to climb into this thing. And I forget the span, you might know, but the span of the bucket.
4-H.
What?
It's big.
It's big. I mean, it could pick off the whole table up and all of us. So we need that when we have storms, when we have big storms. That is what we use to manipulate the snow and to, make areas clear and all of that. Our bucket loader was very old, the one that we had, and it got to the point that it really was not fixable anymore. And so we're gonna do an RFP and go ahead and procure the best price that we can, but they're pretty pricey.
$500,000,
Yeah, $500,000, $600,000. So it was a short-term solution for us and absolutely something that we essentially needed. We rented it just for those months that we needed it for.
I'll just add real quick, just because it's highly related. We haven't had a equipment replacement plan in quite some time. So this past year, the airport, the team and myself completely analyzed a 10+ year equipment replacement plan for every piece of equipment that we own. This one was one of them because we were renting it for some time. Because we have additional spaces out there to clear, like we were saying, we have a new ramp. Larry keeps building more services out there. So having that formalized and known process of replacing equipment, and knowing that this is one of those first initial pieces that we need to replace, along with another piece that's going to be going out to bid pretty soon, which is another $500,000, $750,000 piece. Is highly important to us, so that we don't have equipment rentals like this.
Yes.
Newbie question. The intro says you're seeking over $500,000 budget neutral amendment. And all the little backgrounds say an increase. How does that end up being budget neutral?
Yeah. Great question. So in the chart, the sort of the graphic that I have in there, I have a section that shows all the increases, and then below I have a section that shows the decreases. Yeah, earlier this year, we came to you and got approval for us to do a lighting and fire alarm major overhaul in this garage. We are now starting that project. So, and as part of that, because we didn't start that, we'll say, in the winter or before that, we didn't have the costs that I had budgeted for when I got the contract approved. I put it out there thinking, oh, we'll get this going, we'll get this done. But just due to timing, planning, and everything else, getting of equipment, we're now starting it. This project is going to take probably about a year, so we will spend some of it this year. So I have a budget that I increase this repairs and expense. So you'll see that it looks like I'm doing a great job managing my costs of repairs and expense on the P&L. It's very low percentile compared to the overall budget because it was such a large, it was like a $2+ million.
Which answers your question from the last commission meeting of why so low on the repairs
Yeah, so I'm going ahead and I don't need to increase the revenue. I do have some revenues that we're gonna be above, but I can take it from there. I can just say, well, I'm not gonna spend it this year. That's what I'm doing. So you move it where we need it.
All right, Commissioners, anything else? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, that carries. That concludes our action items, so you move on to item 6, which is the construction update.
So I'll give you a little update on the parking garage. I know we've talked about quite a bit already. So we are starting that project. The contractor actually has been on site daily for 3 months, getting prepared, reviewing everything. We are starting to quadrant off the south portion of the parking garage, which is the 3 levels. Starting in the southwest corner, that quarter of that garage will be quarantined off, and they'll start construction there approximately May 15th, depending on how long it takes to clear cars. And it progresses. We have a plan, a 6-month plan, move from one position to another for 6 months to finish the south. And then from there, we do the same thing on the north portion, which is the 5 levels, and quadrant that off, a section at a time. And that'll be an 8-month process. So we're looking at 14 months from now.
It's
Hopefully,
complicated, you have to wait for people to leave the
Yeah.
spot.
And-
before you can
and-
do
and
parking,
then-
but still stop new people from parking.
right. Then if we have a rush, we have to make adjustments. It'll probably take more than 14 months, but yeah. So that's going on. The goal is to start on May 15th. Now we've got a schedule, a plan. You're welcome to come look at it. The other thing we've done also, we updated our assessment of the parking garage with a structural engineer. Since it hadn't been done since prior to the pandemic, and we kind of had got put on hold. So that just was received yesterday. I haven't gone through it thoroughly, but it reassessed everything where we were with everything structurally and all the things we want to do out there. And that's done. We're going to get a presentation from the engineer next week on that. In the meantime, we're also going to rebid the expansion joint project that was put on hold pre-pandemic. And then also the stairwells will be bid and done. So assessment and not reevaluating, but looking at, make sure our plan is consistent with where we started before the pandemic. So that's been done. Haven't thoroughly reviewed it yet, but we'll be by the end of next week. We'll be all updated on that. So that's it on the parking garage. The other updates to what I already updated is the Texaway Alpha mill and overlay. I had said the construction was going to start on June 5th. That's moved to June 15th because we're doing the passenger boarding bridge at gate 9, and there's a little bit of a conflict. So we don't want to disturb the airlines too badly. So we're moving that back a little bit. It's the same contractor, so that's a little different. The residential sound installation program, wanted to update you on that. We did receive bids. Bids came in less than $100,000 on average per home. So we did drive down the cost. We had more bidders, and for not 54 homes, but 53, because one backed out at the last minute. So we did receive the bids, and we did submit a grant application for the construction of those improvements, plus the engineering outreach and everything else for the next 50 that will apply for a grant to do the construction next year. So
I just want to add, Larry, the outreach that Larry and his team had performed just to get contractors encouraged to bid on this, which is why we received multiple bids. And I'm gonna say why we received bids less than $100,000 per house. Originally, we were projecting years ago 50.
Right.
Yes.
So, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so it's double, but the price is coming down. Larry hosted a contractor workshop ahead of the bids. He invited a bunch of contractors and subcontractors just to be more familiar, more comfortable with what was actually happening. Because this is a highly unique project for the area, especially working with over 50 individual homeowners in one year with unique circumstances, unique build outs and requirements. So that's a huge part of how this all unfolded and how we're able to hopefully get a grant supported by the FAA. for this for 54 houses, I think.
53 now, yeah, and 50 more forward. So we were able to move the ask from the verification of intent with the FAA of 7.8 million down to about 6.3 million this year, which is, they were planning 7.8, we're at 6.3. That opens up some money for other things for the region. So that was a good thing. I said the jet bridge or passenger boarding bridge at gate 12. I'm sorry, I got to change up to gate 9 now. It was going to start in a couple of weeks. It started yesterday. You can look out there. They're marking it. They're going to start putting the foundation in. The jet bridge is due to get here Wednesday the next week or two. It'll be operational by July 4th weekend is the goal.
June.
June 15th. Yeah, the jet bridge will be here. It's in Utah. Okay, the south apron, that's down near the Beta assembly facility and taxiway G extension. We just met with the contractor and we're coming up with a schedule to start on that, hopefully in the next 60 days. That's an update for my update. The North Terminal Replacement Project. So that was the congressionally directed spending that we received before Mr. Leahy left office. And we are now at 30%, close to 30% design. We should receive those plans by tomorrow, at which time we've requested from the FAA the ability to hire a construction manager at risk rather than do a typical design bid, wait to see what you get for pricing. So we're going to do an RFQ for a construction manager at risk, which will cut down some of the engineering costs, but it'll cost us more from the contractor to help us through the costing. And then actually when they bid these projects, rather than just, they'll be going out to hundreds of different subcontractors to get the project done. And we'll know what the price is without waiting to 2 o'clock on a certain day and start opening and reading. So that's the goal. So that's where we are with that. We're waiting for the FAA to approve that, and we'll go out for an RFQ. And hopefully within 30, 45 days, we have them on the project, and then we can move it forward from there. Eric talked about the residential sound insulation program, the ask being down, and the application, we received the bids last weekend. The application was submitted on Monday for that grant application on May 3rd. That's an update. I'll answer any other questions if I missed anything or from anything else.
Commissioner, anything for there?
Larry, obviously, there's some demolition that's involved in some of these projects, like the one you just mentioned with the North Terminal and such. These originally were built in the late 70s, most of these projects.
Well, not the North Concourse, that the existing one. What's that? 12 years old?
2000.
Oh,
2000. Okay, so 20. Okay.
I guess the real focus of my question is, what happens when you demolish something and there seems to be asbestos or some sort of hazardous material?
So part of the design is do abatement study to ensure what we know what we're going to be getting into for material before we tear it down. That's part of the scope here. That'll be done. And then part of Act 250, there's a requirement in the permitting process to show how we're going to our recycling plan on how we're going to take those materials and either reuse, recycle, or dispose of. So all that comes into play. It will be thoroughly evaluated. We'll know what we have before we start touching anything.
So it's not like Burlington High School where we need to build a new airport then.
Nice.
We are building a new airport.
That's right.
Very appropriately removed.
Yeah. So no, that's reviewed very thoroughly, and yeah. So.
Are you keeping the observation tower?
We are going to have a new one. So we'll keep the. Okay, that's right. Okay. Right now.
Yes.
Well, depending on how much it costs, that'll be the first thing that comes out if we can't afford it. Okay, will be a 3rd floor on the North Terminal where we'll have observation, meeting rooms, and our administrative offices. So, but to be honest, if the costs come in more, that's the first thing that goes away. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the existing observation tower remains.
Yeah.
That's open now to passengers that have tickets. The new space that Larry's referring to, right now, we need to design a permanent location for the administration offices. We're right in the middle of the terminal building and especially in the connection of the two wings of the airport. So the design process is looking at a public amenity and a administration office that is open to the public. Right now, we're behind the security door, and I really would like to see our offices available to the public to enter. And that's what that third floor possibility is.
And part of this project is to remove everything along the windows along that side, so people aren't walking down that funky hallway. They're walking by the windows, seeing the plains and the mountains till they get to the north. So, but our office is sitting right in the middle of that right now, so.
My hope is over the next month, as we go through the approval process with the FAA, is to come to you with a presentation of this 30% design, so you can see the basis of that as we go out to bid for our construction manager at risk contractor. Because once they're in play, they're gonna be helping the full design unfold, so that hopefully we can be shovels in the ground sometime next year. Demolition is also a big part of that conversation because of the phasing of this project and the impacts to the airlines. So we're already meeting with the airlines on what is happening next as we develop this project. But I would say even if these numbers come in, we truly need to look at an option to build out our new administration offices up there, because we can't take up the prime real estate specific to a passenger. That's a high priority to relocate those office space, get a public facing, and add an amenity for similar to this mezzanine area, for revenue, small revenue sources for the airport, renting out rooftop areas, bar areas up there, those types of things, connected to an administration office area. It's extremely exciting. We just had that presentation today with some of our engineering firms.
Airport weddings.
It's been done.
Yeah, we've had weddings up here, not tonight, tomorrow night. Hannah's working with the South Burlington Business Association. They're hosting their annual meeting up here. We hosted the Lake Champlain Regional Chamber of Commerce board meetings up here. We've had department head meetings up on the mezzanine. None of those are revenue producing yet, but the hope is if you have a nice quality, whether it's conference room space or public amenity, there's some real demand and interest for that type of space. I'd get married here.
Again.
Again, it's the same.
Wouldn't have to hang around for the reception. They could get on an airplane and leave.
Use that as such a destination reception, I like that, nice.
Commissioners, anything else for Larry? Thank you, Larry. Item 7 is the financial update from Marie.
You have a financial update. I did somehow manage to cut off the P&L, profit and loss statement when it went and got put on board doc. So Hannah did add the financial piece this afternoon. I will give, I've shared a little bit of this already with our, I can do this, so we go. So we have some good things that are happening here, and we're in a good place. So our revenues, I mean, one great place that I want to start is highlighting some of our bigger revenues, which we do on the recovery metrics. And I want to point out that all of our revenues are above what they were prior to COVID, with the exception of the PFCs. We are at 92% for the PFCs, which makes sense because we're getting closer and closer to getting to our full employment. You know, those have been coming up, and even from the start of this fiscal year, where they were a little bit, they were still in the 80%, and now we're seeing in the 90% for our, but that's an average for this year for our PSCs. But you can see our parking. I want to highlight, this year we will have our highest revenue ever with the parking garage. And I had the highest month I've ever seen for the month of April, and the month of March was even higher. So we are definitely hitting some new records in terms, and we've seen it on the management side of it, and just as far as the capacity in the garage and what we've seen. Something has changed with people are preferring to park in the garage. So even though we just have more people who are utilizing it, the demand has changed, the preference has changed. But we're seeing it similar with our car concession revenues. Ours are 125% of what they were prior to COVID. Our landing fees are over 100% again. So these are all things that are helping us succeed here at the airport. And we'll be able to continue to work with our airline partners, who are a primary reason why we're here, to keep those rates somewhat level and keep those rates good. So that's kind of the highlight with the revenues. I wanted to point that out. Our expenses, we are spending more money this year than we did last year. A lot of that is, there are plans. These are plans, things that we had anticipated and budgeted for, and it is working out well because our revenues, our revenues are higher, but we've also been able to continue this year. A few months ago, we did utilize some of our drawdown, that we still have this stimulus money that is available. Right now, we've got over $4 million of total stimulus money that is still available for us to use. We will continue to use that. We may use a little bit toward the end of the year. We're still determining that, and then we're planning on using it all up throughout next year. So that is we are able to use it on things like salaries or very specific things we can use that stimulus money on. So we're continuing to do that, and it helps our overall ability to get lots of good things done or caught up in other things that we're doing here at the airport, because it helps to balance out our total input and our total monies coming in. Cash was, again, we're doing consistently well. We had about $6.5 million in the airport checking account. It's a healthy place that I like to see, because it helps us manage. We are starting to have construction bills and other things starting to come in, and so our cash goes up and down as we wait for reimbursements. And then on our AIP receivable, a lot of that is due from AIP 118, which we are awaiting a secondary. We're going to get an amendment from the FAA when they have money available, and we'll be able to draw that back down from the FAA and AIP 125, and then it's sort of spread out among the different AIPs. But that is the highlight of my report. I will entertain any questions that folks may have.
In general, who sets the landing fees? Is that the FAA?
We do. Yep. So as we negotiate with our signatory airline partners, those that actually sign the airline lease, we, through any methodology that is set as part of the contract, we're currently negotiating that contract right now to adjust the landing fees. That is also the same methodology that we use for terminal square footage rates. How much expenses do we need out there? How much do we need to recover, essentially? And then that goes across the board. If there's airlines that don't sign on to that are non-signatory, there's a 25% surcharge on top of those landing fees. But we set those rates.
How can we change it?
We haven't changed them in 5 years, 6 years. This year there will probably be a change. Now on a terminal rate, again, we're still negotiating this, so I won't go too much into the details, but on a terminal rate, you're gonna see the rate probably decrease because we've added 30,000 square feet. So the revenue is going to increase, but the rate itself is going to decrease. We're just spreading that rate across more square footage.
Right.
Yes.
And
then
your commercial landing fees are based on aircraft weight or number of passengers?
per maximum gross landing weight. And we charge per 1,000 pounds. And right now it's $2.44 a square foot. That's inclusive of a landing fee as well as a terminal apron fee, which we also charge by them. And same with FedEx, they get charged that same landing. Now, smaller aircraft, Heritage manages that through our FBO agreement with them. So there's other classifications, less than 6,000 pound, that sort of thing.
Is landing fees a big consideration for an airline on whether or not they fly here?
Big, huge. Terminal's probably a little bit more, I would say. We always spend more time on the terminal rental rates because there's a lot of square footage that's either preferential square footage, common use square footage that they use and split, which does tend to be split based on the number of passengers, as well as exclusive use of the airline ticket counters themselves. So, but all of that comes into play with that. I think we're highly competitive and probably on the lower end of a square footage rate and the landing fee, but not by much. I think we're very competitive. And it depends on which airline you ask to. If you have a legacy carrier, they might be okay with some of these rates versus ultra low cost or low cost carrier who says, "You're charging us." So it depends on what you have.
I say that to us.
Commissioners, anything else for Marie? Good, thank you.
Can I add one more
Yeah, sure.
thing I think is important to your question? We have an incentive program as well. We do not charge for the first 2 years of operation for any new airline or new route coming to this airport. We don't supplement that either with other airlines that are already here, meaning if we're not charging it, we're not going to ask another airline to pick up that role. We strictly do not charge to encourage that growth of new air carriers. And that's a highly, magnified is on those types of programs, both from incumbent airlines and the FAA to make sure that it's a fair process.
All right, so we're on to item 8, which is noise data. Yeah.
So not much to report today, except we just had 48 additional comments since last time I reported. Also, just to reiterate, we have added the heat map, as we're calling it, for the counts by addresses. It kind of shows the trajectory of the flight path over our runway, so you can get a better understanding of where those comments are coming from geographically. And mentioned this last time as well, but I'll just mention again, we've added an updated map related to the residential sound insulation program, showing the houses as they relate to the different phases. So the pilot program, the group 1 for this summer and then next summer. So any updates we have to that map, we've been including it on the agenda, but we're going to include it on btvsound.com, which I'll keep under the noise
Okay. Yeah.
agenda category.
It's like, oh, I think it's out there and not back.
So we can also update in the package, but I think it's just easiest for people to see the updates on the website.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's great for the public.
Yep.
All
Great.
the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, maybe I'm not following on the linked map, how you're differentiating which homes have already had the installation completed.
Are you talking about the sound installation program map on btvsound.com?
Oh, so it's not linked to the agenda item?
Sorry, the one linked to the agenda item is related to the noise comments per address. So the ones related to the houses for that sound installation program is on btvsound.com.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Bryn, we'll keep updating that as well. I think it's got the latest multiple colors, the 54 new additional houses. So we'll keep, like Hannah said, we'll keep updating that so that there's schedule, map, and changes as we go along.
To keep it simple, there are 16 that are going to construction this summer. There are 53. We just applied for the money to move forward as soon as possible, which depending on weather, will either late this year or early next year. And we just, part of this grant is to get the money to establish the next 50 homes, which will pop up on there next.
Great. Yeah, I saw that in your earlier update, that summary. So thanks for tying that back for me.
Yeah.
All righty, thank you, Hannah. Item 9, director's report.
Excellent. I thought I would start by giving you a dual update on reorganization, both from the airport staffing perspective and reorganization and rebranding, and welcoming everybody now officially to the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport, which was passed just this past Monday night at the city council. We have some work to do. At that meeting on Monday, that authorized me and the team to move forward with FAA notifications. Dave has a tremendous amount of work on his shoulders for documentation updates, everything from our airport emergency plan to our security plan and airport certification manual. And so there's a lot of paperwork involved in a name change. But more exciting, there's also a rebranding opportunity and a logo change opportunity. Hannah and I had solicited requests for qualifications for a consultant to help us look at our brand and incorporate the new name into our brand with a schedule, a budget, and an implementation program to roll out this new name, getting it into our branding profile, everything from social to commercials to every marketing thing that Anna works on, and then an unveiling most likely later this summer of what that logo looks like, inclusive of the physical assets, signage, all the way down to lettering. So it's an exciting opportunity for us to change this, and we're kicking it off right now and hoping to unveil that later this summer, which we'll invite all the commissioners to as we do that. Thank you again for your approval and recommendation for the reorganization that also passed a few weeks ago at the city council meeting unanimously, which is incredible news, and really encourage not just the leadership team, but also all the airport staff. So the reorganization is fully in place right now, and based on the phasing that I requested, we're now advertising some of the key positions, including the deputy director position, the director of innovation and marketing, the associate director of, the associate engineer position, an airport maintenance position that would report to Dave. Dave's new role has shifted. Welcome Marie, who is now our official director of finance. Larry's title has also changed to the director of planning, engineering, and sustainability. So we have a lot of things in motion with the reorganization. We're getting a lot of great feedback. I believe it's the second week that we posted these. A lot of great feedback on all of the positions. Feedback meaning applications, which is really great. We're advertising, especially these leadership positions nationwide through both the airport industry websites as well as other job notification websites. So we're gonna be looking at interviews in probably two or 3 weeks, going through that process of hiring mostly 2 new leadership positions and a new role as well. And then we'll roll out 2 new manager positions are posted as well under Dave's role. I really wanted to see a deputy director come into play first before posting other manager positions, because they're going to be reporting to the deputy director. That will also alleviate some of the pressures that really the whole team has on them right now, with multiple hats and multiple departments of the airport that they're managing, like Marie, Larry, Dave. So it's going really good. Of course, we have some work ahead of us and hiring. We want to grow our team as this all unfolds, but really, really promising. Parking updates. I think we talked a little bit about that before. I think I covered most of it in our prior conversation. The big news, I think, is the kickoff of our new lighting and the fire alarm system in the garage. Long process. We're going into our busy season, but we're going to have to strategize exactly what closes, what opens, and how we work with it. The contractor is phenomenal, which is MEI, super accommodating. For example, they wanted to start last week. We said absolutely not. We're going to be full. So they weren't able to do that, but they're already mobilized, like Larry said, on site, ready to go. Great improvements to the experience of the parking garage, especially with the lighting. I already mentioned the signage plan is going to be implemented. One-way access is also going to be implemented. We're going to start incorporating some of the hotel designs into that parking system as well. But we're also looking at expanding, especially in our surface lots, additional access control systems so we can better account for in and out of those parking areas, so that when we do have overflow, it's not as much labor intensive operations. We can send passengers there almost immediately with no repercussion from a labor standpoint. That's going to happen this summer. We really need that to be implemented this summer. And although the schedule is really strong, airline schedule is really strong for the summer, it's those peak holiday demands, especially when we're not having as much passengers coming inbound and leaving the parking garage as we are coming outbound to the airport. So really positive changes, long-term changes in preparation for that. We haven't started yet, and Marie and I will have the conversation most likely in the next couple of months, but also analyzing our parking rate structure. Is that the appropriate structure? Is that why we have so many parkers coming in? Now, which is great if our rate is really low. I don't think it is, but a full analysis of that parking rate structure needs to happen. And that rate hasn't changed since I've been so over 10 years. Construction. Larry hit on a ton of this already, but we're going into a busy season and we have a lot of construction. We have a lot of partners at play, Beta, Heritage, the airlines, Taxiway Alpha, which is our primary taxiway adjacent to the terminal building. This taxiway right here, just outside of the terminal building, that's going to be under construction. You can see the proximity to our terminal building, which is going to require very careful planning efforts and phasing efforts so that we don't close down those pieces of the gates. Dave and Larry have been doing a great job coordinating that with the airlines to make sure there's as little impact as possible to that repaving plan. South Apron, again, Larry already mentioned this, but this is the very southern end of our airport where the old quarry used to be. A major, massive new apron space is already designed, bid, and the contractor is hopefully going to be ready to mobilize in the next 60 days or so that we can really commence that new apron space, which would also accommodate our new tenant down there, which is Beta Technology. Not as intrusive of a construction project for us, but still a great deal of collaboration, especially from a security standpoint, because our airfield is technically growing with new fence lines. The north renovation project, if you haven't seen the renovations up on the north side, more than happy to show anybody. It's a totally different concourse up there. Much greater spaces, additional seating locations. We have new, I keep forgetting those people behind. We have new seating that's hopefully going to be arriving in the next month or two. The bathrooms are still being expanded out there. Just growing that space for our two primary airlines, American and United, who take about 65% of our total passengers just from that one. So great improvements up there. Also working with Hudson News, they're in a temporary location. They're no longer in their original location, and they've sent me a letter recently that they'd like to invest a significant amount of funding into the airport, close to $750,000, to stay here a little bit longer and grow their footprint, or their shop size of what they want to do. The North Concourse home, which is really great news. So I'll be bringing that to you in future meetings as we go through some of the negotiation of that. And we already talked about the next project and Civic Clerk. Hannah's going to take that one.
So, just to give you all an update, before the end of the month, we're going to be switching from the board docs program where all the agenda items are found to something called Civic Clerk. So, for the appropriate parties, I'll send you more information about that, but we'll be sending that out to, on the regular channels and the groups, the warned meeting group, what we typically post. But wanted to just give an update here, so that everyone knows that we'll be finding the agenda in a separate place from next meeting forward.
So this will start in June.
Yes. Yeah.
So right when we were comfortable with board docs. The great part about it, everything in board docs, all of this information is being merged over to Civic Clerk. So members of the public can access meeting minutes, agendas, conversation, or written conversation documents on the Civic Clerk site itself. We're going to be one of the first departments in the city of Burlington to switch over to this. So we're going to test it out and work with a couple of other departments as we roll into this. Eventually, the entire city of Burlington will be on Civic. That's my update for you today.
All right. Commissioners, Brent, I see you have some chats. Is there anything you wanted to bring up with Nick at this point of the agenda?
Some of the things I mentioned were related to earlier conversations with the consent agenda. Just dropped in a link for an example of the Dallas-Fort Worth and how they use lighting to help with indicators for available parking spaces. I actually saw something similar in action at a city parking garage in Fort Worth and thought it was pretty cool. So by way of other capital improvements, I'm sure you want to put on your list. And then I was just looking at the noise exposure map web pages, and I noticed item 21 in the construction updates that there's some movement on that, and just wanted to make sure that the BTV sound web pages would be updated that progresses forward. So just those two items.
Perfect. We absolutely. I think that's a great comment, especially on the noise exposure map, making sure the website reflects our current project. We do not yet have a grant for our noise exposure map update yet. But that's going to start a whole process this year.
And we do have the grant.
Oh, sorry.
And we have the contract. It's just we're waiting on the noise consultant to get back to us.
Perfect, which is Jones Penguin. Sorry.
We're progressing.
Noise reuse.
Yeah, that was a different one.
So noise map, we do have a grant, but we haven't started the project yet. So as we go through this, we're just going to be similar to what you see here, which was part of the 2019 updates. We'll start updating those for sure.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
And that comes with many public meetings and conversations about that as well.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, anything else for Nick?
One question about your hiring. Are you getting much response from existing employees who want to move up?
We are. Yeah, I think we've seen definitely, maybe less than a handful, half a handful of existing employees, but also outside airport departments of the city of Burlington that want to transition. So that's really great. And nationwide applicants, California to Oregon, all over the place that we're, which is good. That's a good sign that our notification is getting out there.
All right, anything else for Nick?
Hey, Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I wanted to say this earlier and I had a barking dog and now I have a barking dog again, but Nick, hopefully you can still hear me. I just wanted to just add to what was said before about the reappointment letter and just congratulate you and the team on amazing job that you're doing. And was proud to sign that. It's reappointment's well deserved. You're doing an awesome job. So I just wanted to be on the same.
Thank you very much.
All righty, we'll wrap up item 9 and move on to item 10, commissioner items. I didn't have anything in advance, but does anyone have any commissioner items that they'd like to discuss at this time?
Yeah, so,
That's it.
still kind of new to the whole commissioner thing and the airport operations, and I know this isn't a big part of the airport, but would like to talk a little bit about the general aviation situation. So I've got a couple of inputs from constituents going, what's going on? How come I can't get a hangar? How come I can't get a tie down? Mike was very gracious and showed me around today. And there aren't a whole lot of options right now. Well, not a whole lot of turnover, as I understand. I don't pretend to know all the intricate details on how you lease space to Heritage and how they decide to rent hangar space. But was wondering if there's room for any discussion on part of your master plan going forward for integrating more GA hangar and tie-down space.
Yeah, that would absolutely. Yes, absolutely. There are definitely intentions to accommodate really the demand, and it's Burlington area and beyond. It's really the demand of the state that really requires additional GA opportunities, whether it's tie down space or more preferable, especially in the Northeast, indoor space. Incredibly expensive, so it's very hard for the airport to sponsor a development project like that without recovering those assets, and I imagine it could be similar situations for private development opportunities, whether existing companies on the field or not. However, we've already met with a great group of GA developers and pilots and everywhere from small aircraft owners up to corporate business-sized aircraft to potentially look at future spaces to build a hangar. That's going to require an RFP to go out for available land that we have currently today. We're one of Larry's construction updates is also our maintenance building relocation, which would also open up opportunities for growth in our existing space, whether it's general aviation, additional fuel opportunities, or supportive equipment, just general open space, so that our maintenance shop isn't in the realm of the general aviation program that we have today. Get it out of there, get it up really up to our northwest quadrant. Also being sensitive to the issues that were raised last year with our community partners in South Burlington. We did request a rezoning on a large parcel of land that was denied at the planning commission level. And the purpose and intent of that was to add additional spaces for general aviation. We're looking at that a little bit differently, looking at other opportunities that are not as impactful to the community, but still accomplishes the goals of adding hangar space to some of the available lands that we have. And again, that would go out to bid most likely this summer if we're able to move things around and make sure it all aligns with some of the other public outreach that we're doing on landscaping and working with the city of South Burlington on their city plan, and also working within our master plan to make sure it all aligns. So long answer to your question, comment, but it's absolutely at the forefront of the conversation. I've heard it many times. I think we're highly competitive in the space highly competitive in the hangar rentals. Heritage has been doing a great job with their communication to us on renting and rolling those spaces over as quickly as possible and utilizing space that is right now occupied by unairworthy aircraft and making sure that we can I think that's a really, really important piece. Also adding the new south apron, which gives us available new tie down space, and utilizing existing apron, which has been vacant for over 10 years. We have 18 plus spaces of tie down that have not been used. So there is available space for aircraft owners exterior. There's no hangars, but part of that RFP process will most likely include building opportunities for that additional growth.
So where is this south apron you're talking about?
So the south apron is being built right here. So this is taxiway golf coming on parallel to our main runway. The south apron, see the fillet off the taxiway there, the extension, that will continue to go be extended, the taxiway off, and then the new apron comes in right here. So it's
Will Beta be,
A little bigger, yeah.
will Beta be controlling that?
Beta will be leasing a portion of that apron, but another large portion, similar in size to this apron right here, will be available to any general aviation aircraft. No different than we wouldn't lease or allow anybody to park in front of the hangar anywhere. And then this is the other vacant space. So this apron was built before me, 2000. We're at 10-3. Long time ago. This was old marshland that was filled in and the new apron, and it's been quite some time. You can see we tend to store our snow removal equipment on there because it doesn't get utilized. However, that's one of the spaces that Beta leases today. They don't lease the apron space on this, but they lease the grass for additional hangar space, and there's still a good portion of
So
space.
I don't know what the economics of, tie downs is. There's no state mandate that you provide a certain amount of GA tie downs, right? City of Burlington doesn't care. They just want you to be fiscally responsible.
That's right.
How quickly would Heritage or you be able to gin up that tie down space as option if people wanted it?
Quickly to do what with it?
To start renting it out?
Right away. We've gotten Highgate Airport, for example, is closed right now, so we're getting a lot of requests to park aircraft here because of their temporary closure for the construction. Dave's gotten a couple of calls. Shelburne is another airport that has that fluctuation of what's happening, especially in the winter time because it's a grass field, so they'll tend to park here. It's available to the public. If anybody lands at this airport today, it's the open apron. Park your aircraft right there, and then we'll follow
Pay a day rate.
and pay a day rate on that particular area. We're not in the business of managing a one-off day-to-day type of operation. We have talked to Heritage because they are our FBO on the field to manage that type of situation. We're not there yet. We'll have an agreement with Heritage yet. Those are the sorts of things that's outside our realm of operation to manage daily. And again, portions of the airfield are eventually going out, especially this northwest area, for available building opportunities. If there's groups that would like to work in funding.
So if somebody asked me, hey, Commissioner, you need to get more tie down space at Burlington.
I don't think there's anything about that right now.
Right, well,
Yeah.
I know everybody wants hangars.
Yeah.
But right now, the answer could be actually there is tie down space.
That's correct.
Might have to pay for it by the day,
That's correct.
and you go to Heritage. That,
Right for the valley.
Yeah, we're working on that part.
We're working on that part. For the valley, still communicating directly with us. But Heritage
Okay.
also has opportunities as well.
okay. So that, and then is there a separate community of stakeholders that are having regular meetings, trying to figure out how to come together to?
There is.
get the finances to build a GA hangar?
There is, and
And it's probably been going on
it's-
for a number of years.
I wouldn't say a number of years, I would say maybe 8 years. And it's across the board, right? Some folks want an individual hangar. I want a hangar for my Cessna 172, and that's all I want. Some folks have proposed larger build outs, maybe a 3 to 4 hangar location. We've had one person that had proposed a 25 T hangar location, which they backed out once they realized that the finances don't work on renting individual hangars like that. So there's a lot of opportunities. I think our obligation at the airport, if there clearly is the demand for this, is to say, here's some opportunities to build those hangars, here's the locations to throw those out. And that's what we want to get out, publish this summer.
Is it okay to hand out the contact information for that group?
Sure. Yeah. We hand it to you.
So somebody asked me, I'm really interested in the hangar in Burlington, you go, well, you're the group that's meeting.
Gotcha.
You might have to pony up a bunch of money.
That's right, and we're hosting right now about quarterly meetings with those groups. To kind of give those updates. We've got a large.
I could get the,
Month ago.
is that all right? If I-
Yeah, of course. Oh, no, of course. And I told the group the same thing as, it's word of mouth a lot of times too. So as that group comes in here, inviting others to see, not just about hangar space, but just general conversation about construction on the airport. Delays during the summer months, during those construction periods, closures that are happening. So the whole team is there to answer those types of questions too. A lot of times the PA community might not know about those because they're either hobby flyers or corporate flyers that might not be.
But overall, the Burlington Airport is not gonna build a GA hangar.
We're not in a
It's
position.
gonna lease the space for somebody else to come in and build.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
And we did just go out to bid for another hangar over there. Because this hangar. So we're going through that process of moving up additional GA opportunities. That's a longer conversation.
With the South Apron, Nick, is there gonna be an opportunity for buildings, or is that too close to that? After Vegas, they said there's gonna be a fairly open section
Correct.
down there, is that?
It's a tricky area. There is approach surfaces or flight paths. Protected airspace over in that area. So we're gonna have to be really, really strategic on how we do that. Anything on that side? No. But we are looking at, is there any possibility for growth even beyond that space? And again, this is our maintenance shop right here. This picture is a little bit old. We have a new taxiway right here to the end of runway 1. We're looking at we are designing a new cargo apron right here to expand cargo opportunities at the airport. And is there another opportunity or another space for after we relocate for different uses in that space as well?
Thank you very much for that. Got another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Related to maintenance, you were talking about having a 10-year plan and
Yeah.
Budgeting for ongoing maintenance issues. Just was curious because last Sunday, I think, the glide slope on the ILS approach into LaGuardia went down.
It's not good.
Not good. It
Yeah.
was a bad weather day, it caused major problems.
Yeah.
Now, we're not a major hub airport, but.
Yeah.
What are the requirements for having backup parts?
Yeah.
And people to install those parts when you lose your ILS or.
Right. So all of the navigational aids
Yes,
or
but-
glide slope, those are all managed, fixed by the Federal Aviation Administration. So we don't touch any of that. We don't have any personnel.
So it's on that.
It's on that, everything from the ILS lighting systems to the glide slope to the radar itself. That's all FAA Tech Ops. The great part is FAA Tech Ops for the region is located right here underneath the tower. So they have those parts. I can't speak specifically to what they have, but they have the staff stationed right here underneath the tower. They share the same building.
It's not part of your.
It's not part of us at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
No further questions.
But we do coordinate directly. So Dave and his team, as they do multiple daily inspections out there, they also look at the runway lighting systems, the ones that we have, which are the edge lighting and things like that. We have backup parts for all of that. But when they find a light out on the approach lighting on both ends, they report that directly to Tech Ops so that we can get somebody out right away. Because there are specific requirements if a certain number of lights are out, and then there's pieces that need to shut down.
All right, Commissioners, anything else? All right, move on to item 11, which is follow-up items. 1101 key permits for taxi.
Nothing further to present on that. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I participated in a taxi vehicle for hire board meeting, not a taxi board, but a vehicle for hire board meeting. They're looking at some requests and updates, not just to the quality of our interactions with the public, quality of the vehicles and the cleanliness of the vehicles that are stationed for the taxi queue, but also the availability of taxis, specifically after a certain period of time at night, when sometimes, especially after midnight, there might not be a taxi out there, and there's a lot of folks that need that. So we're working with them. We're also going to be working with some of our other airport partners to see what their programs are that can help with that. Queue permits specifically was at my request to increase the number of queue permits that we can sell. Right now, I think we're at 40, less than 50 queue permits out there. So adding additional queue permit opportunities. I did present that to the vehicle for hire board. There is a member of the taxi community on that board, so he was a little leery. They were a little leery of just doing that without kind of a long-term solution. So we're working through that before we arbitrarily set.
So we'll keep that on for another time. And then 1102, briefing on the North Terminal building.
And this is hopefully in the next 30 days, I can bring back the general concept of the new North Terminal building, inclusive of financial plan, which I think Jeff Schulman asked about that. So I'm hoping to do that in the month of June.
Commissioners, anything else that should go on to this follow-up items list that we've discussed today that we'd like if I'll follow up? Okay, that concludes item 11. Item 12 is adjournment. Do we hear a motion to adjourn? Adjourn. All right, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. Steven has made the motion. I'll second and Greg second. All in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.